Welcome to Trudge the Road. It's sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, and Texas. And they have offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and the nation's capital. And they can be reached by calling 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. We're your hosts. I'm Rich, a recovered drug addict.
My name is Jerry, and I'm a sober alcoholic.
And we start the show the same way we do every week, Jerry, where you tell people why we do this program.
Trudge the Road is dedicated to folks who are suffering from the disease of addiction to drugs and alcohol, just like us, and every bit as important, family and friends. You suffer greatly from this disease, and we hope to be able to provide for you some answers and ultimately, with God's grace, some solutions to this tremendous dilemma.
All right. We do have a couple of sources where you can catch the show that I kind of want to throw out there right in the beginning. We do have a Twitter feed now. You could just put TTR Show into the search engine, and then you can follow us, and we have updates on the show and things that are going on and things of that manner. You could also go to Facebook and type in Trudge the Road Radio. We have our Facebook page up there. We have 80 friends now. Can you believe it?
All right. That's
pretty
great.
good.
Thank you very much. I've never had 80 friends in my life.
Well, I'm looking for 160 friends, so let's see if we can't double that. Also, if you've missed any of our prior episodes, all you have to do is go to YouTube and type in Trudge the Road Radio, and that's there. Plus, our website, which is recoveryforlifechannel.com. This week, we want to start the show kind of recapping what we ended the show with last week, Jerry, and it was a very, very powerful experience that you had last weekend.
It's guilt. Before I really update you on the story, what the subject matter is guilt. And I think for me, guilt is...
And forgiveness.
It is, and that's definitely in the process, but, I'm kind of at that anger, stage. I'm mad at myself. And I'm going to take you back almost 25 years ago, and I did not know it, but I was going to get sober the next day.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the plan the day before I got sober, and it had to do with that anger and that guilt. I was living in a tree in Louisville, Kentucky. And
Fourth and Oak, I believe.
Fourth and Oak, it's a seedless ash. I was just there a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
I always visit when I'm there. But I had taken a little tumble 30 feet out of that tree, and I was pretty seriously hurt. However, when I made the fall, my blood alcohol level, because they informed me this at the hospital, was 0.39. And that's a lethal amount. So the point is, I really wasn't feeling anything, because I had so much of a load of anesthesia, if you will, on. But, after I got to the hospital and they treated me, and the hours went by and the alcohol wore off and the pain started, and it was immense pain because, again, I had fallen 30 feet out of a tree. And I had lacerations everywhere, broken ribs. It was nasty. And I knew it was the end, and I was so angry at myself, and I felt so guilty because I had let everybody in the world down. I let myself down, and it was over with. And that's when I got a look at myself. The nurse came in and said, "You're going to discharge you," and she gave me these nasty clothes that I'd been wearing when I fell out of the tree, and I took off the lovely hospital gown, And there was a mirror there, and I'm looking at myself in this mirror, just wearing a pair of boxers, and I see the bruises on my chest, the stitches across my eye and my forehead, the lacerations on my knee, the tape is all hanging off with the cotton where the IVs were, and I looked at myself, and I saw that reflection, and I spit at it. I just spit at it. And I walked out and made the decision to end my life, Now God saw it another way, because the next day I got sober. It was the first day of my sobriety. But I know that guilt, and I know where that anger comes from, and I know that I am an alcoholic, and I suffer from the disease of the emotions, and these can be drastically magnified. And what I went through a week ago, and it was really difficult to do the show last week because I was still very much so living the process, as I am now. A young man, I'm his grand sponsor. In other words, a fellow that I sponsor is his sponsor. And Shane was he was the type of kid who just continued to relapse, a heroin addict. And we would get him out, and it was Dr. Joe, our own Dr. Joe, who helped several times in his detox process to make sure that he was comfortable, didn't die, you know. And the last time that he had a relapse, and it was a major one, and as you know, I'm right in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm in the middle. I'm with my people. I do what I can. I knew this kid well. And I'm going to Myrtle Beach for Christmas with my daughter and son-in-law and grandchildren. And I'm just outside of your old stomping grounds, the nation's capital, when the phone rings, and it's Shane. And I know, desperate, I know when the language being used on the other end of that phone is at the end. And I knew that he was at the end, and I thought he was going to die. And I'm not anywhere near home. I'm on my way to Carolina, you know. And as I said before, it came down to that prayer. God help me. What do I do? You know. And it's just amazing how quick that He will provide the answers. Because the thought just crossed, call Mark, a guy that kind of knew Shane, you know, and might be able to intervene at this point because there was nothing I could do but make that phone call, and he did. And by the time I got to Carolina through Virginia, got to which was about 2.5 hours, he had Shane in a treatment center, detoxing and doing all right. Miracle.
And
Absolutely.
things were pretty smooth there for a while. And I should also mention, Shane is somebody, we've had Eli on the show and we've had John on the show. So if you've listened to any of the past shows, they were both connected with getting Shane into where it needed to be.
On several occasions, on more than one occasion. And he came out of treatment, and we were on him. We, you know, provided him a path. And the direction necessary for him to be able to achieve it. And in my opinion, he was thriving. And I'd see Shane a lot, you know, and I'd ask him what I'd ask him. I'd look in those eyes. I know, you know, and I was getting a good response. And he's a big, strapping kid, 25-year-old. He's an electrician, 240 pounds strong as an ox.
Right.
And just a heart every bit as big. Wonderful, you know, and really doing well. And he had a girlfriend, and she was doing Al-Anon. And trying to work a program and trying to understand, and a beautiful young lady. And a week ago, Thursday, she called me. She said, he's acting funny. He's acting funny, you know, and we know what that means. You know, you think he's taking drugs.
Right.
And I called him, and no. I'm worried because they were moving into a new place together. They lived separately, and he was worried because of some credit issues he wouldn't get this apartment. And he said, I've just been overwhelmed. And I talked him through that issue of, you know, how we turn things over, do the next right thing, leave those up to God. Friday, calls me, got the apartment. Everything is good, you know, and I feel great.
But you didn't feel the night that you had talked to him when he's talking about his credit problems that he was, you know, using at that time.
I did not. And, you know, I'm good at it. I'm good. And I did not attain that. And that and the fact that this kid's been honest with me. You know, he really has. So that was Friday. Saturday morning, she went to work, and she called me from where she works at a local hospital, and she said, he's using. I know something is really wrong. You do something, Jerry, please. So I called him. Again, this was Saturday, and this time on the phone, he's loaded, and you can't. I know he is. You know, Shane, I know you're using, and I know you're using. You know, you're sick. You're not bad. You know, we need to work through it. No. I'm not. Well, we're all very familiar with that denial, even though when everybody knows, still deny it. And so I hung up the phone with him, and I called his girlfriend back, and I said, listen, you know, what time do you get off work? She get off work at 3. I said, meet me over at his place, because you two will just fight, but he'll listen to me. In person, if I'm right in his face, he'll do what I say. And being an electrician, he's a Teamster. I know he had insurance. I knew the treatment center that we could walk right in the front door.
Right.
Not going to be a problem. And so I said, I'll meet you there this afternoon at 3. And this is all taking place, I'm thinking, you know, 10-ish in the morning, 10:30. So I did. I went in a car, got in a car, and I drove over there. I got there first, waited a few minutes, and she pulled up, and I said, you know, let me go in first, because if you do it, it's just going to be instantly confrontational, and maybe I can, you know, get something going here right away that's positive and in a direction where we can, you know, bring this to conclusion. And she agreed, and so I had a key, and the music's playing real loud, and I opened the door, and I walked in on Shane. And he's a hider when he's using. I've found him before,
right?
You know, in the bathroom, and so that's my assumption. He's in there. And I walked around the corner into the bedroom, and I looked down, and there was his body, and he was dead. And the thought right now, I can see it. I can see it right now. And it was horrifying. And I hate to tell you this, but I know Dad,
Right.
And he'd been dead a while, a couple of hours anyway. And so now, my head is racing. I've got his girlfriend is out there. She doesn't know. The authorities have to be notified. I wasn't, jumping on 911 because I knew there was nothing they could do. God help me. There went that prayer again. And I just reacted. I called 911, said there is an unresponsive person, gave the address, and I went outside there and I held her hand. And I looked her in the eyes and I said, we have a journey to walk. We're going to walk it together. I'll hold your hand the whole way and I will not let go. Shane is gone. Shane is gone. He's dead. And then, you can only imagine the hysteria and the denial. No, he's not. No, he's not. Right. No, he's screaming he's not. Wanting to go in there, and I would not let her go in there and see that. I would not. I physically prevented that from happening. And what I have gone through is the fact that why didn't I go over there when I was talking to him at 10 o'clock in the morning? I knew what was going on then, and I did not. I waited. I waited until 3 o'clock, and in that time period, he died. And why didn't I go right then? I've saved him before. I'd save him again. And it preys on me, and that guilt and that anger with those magnified emotions. It takes me back to that day at University Hospital in Louisville, Kentucky, looking at myself. These boxer shorts I've got to make things put salt in the wounds. Have got the peace symbol as a design. It was the most horrible day when I spit on myself. And not that I'm experiencing anything that dramatic. I'm not, but it's that guilt is kind of turning to anger, that inward anger, and it's not all bad. And thanks to you and Matt, the producer, he pointed out something that very significant, my own selfishness in this whole ordeal, that I did provide something. She didn't find him. She didn't have to go in and see that body. And that would have been a traumatizing event that would have had consequences maybe for years to come. I can handle it. I know what to do. I've seen that before. And she didn't have to go through it, and I made sure she didn't have to go through it, so that the last thought of him was a smiling young man saying goodbye, lying to her but alive.
We've had this conversation outside, and you are someone that many people seek advice from, myself included, at times, and I can only throw to you what you've thrown to other people when it comes to this whole I shoulda, I coulda, is the fact that you can't wear this. You can't wear this because, you should have done this or you should have done that, or had you been with him the night before, could you have stopped him from buying the heroin in the first? I mean, there's just a whole litany of woulda, coulda, shoulda, woulda, couldas.
I know. I'm going through that.
And you know that as addicts, it wouldn't. Yes, you might have been able to put up a detour sign, but eventually, if we want to get the heroin, or we want to get the meth, or we want to go get the alcohol, we're going to get it, whether you're there or not. You might stop us temporarily, but the fact of the matter is, eventually, we're going to get it. That's the truth of the matter.
It is absolutely the truth. I hate to have to agree with you on that subject matter, but you are 100% correct.
So we have to deal with forgiveness and guilt and forgiving yourself. And this is what we're going to talk about coming up in the next segment, forgiving yourself and letting go of the guilt that you feel.
I can't wait to tell you Dr. B's his take on forgiveness. You'll like that.
Trudge the Road is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. If you're concerned about yourself or a loved one, call 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. We'll be right back with more of Trudge the Road.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Rich and Jerry discuss forgiving yourself. It's coming up next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
There is a new face of recovery, and you see it in the pages of Renew Magazine and at RenewEveryday.com. Renew and RenewEveryday.com are changing the face of recovery for good. Each issue is filled with positive role models, life-affirming stories, encouragement, and ideas to help any life in recovery. Whether you're already enjoying an addiction-free life, have a loved one facing forgiveness challenges or are considering recovery, Renew and RenewEveryday.com can support and inspire you. Join us. Check out RenewEveryday.com to learn more.
Welcome back to Trudge the Road. It's sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment with treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, and Texas, and offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and the nation's capital. They can be reached by calling 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. We're your hosts. I'm Rich, a recovered drug addict.
My name is Jerry. I'm a sober alcoholic.
And last segment, we were talking about the passing of someone that you knew very well, who was probably, I'm assuming, went to your clubhouse?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A regular member of my clubhouse, regular member of my group. Walked him through treatment twice, detoxed him, 3 or 4 times.
And he's somebody that you've been a part of his life. You're a sponsor in that sense.
Sponsor, yeah.
And in other words, you sponsor his sponsor.
Right.
And 2 weeks ago, you found Shane dead.
Right.
In his apartment, and you were with his girlfriend at the time. And just a quick reset is that you had talked to the girlfriend earlier in the day. You had talked to him earlier in the day. She said he was acting funny. You called him. You felt like he was acting funny, so you got with her and said, "Hey, look, let's go over this afternoon at 3 o'clock when you get off work." And that's what you did.
I did. I went over there at 3 o'clock, and he was gone.
And you came in and found Shane. She didn't.
No.
You told her to wait outside.
I made sure she didn't have to see him that way. I wouldn't want anybody to see me.
But you went into it with the anticipation that he's going to be sitting in the bathroom tied off and shooting dope.
Absolutely.
You had no idea that you were going to find him.
The last thing on my mind that I was going to find a corpse that had been dead for probably 2.5 hours.
Now you're going through a lot of emotions, and I know it's been a couple of weeks now, but you are now in the anger phase.
And I hopefully coming out of it, and with a lot of help from you, from Matt, the producer, people, making some really good points, because I still suffer from alcoholism. I haven't had a drink or a drug in 24 years, but don't think I don't suffer from the disease. And it's that fear, that magnification, and that is really prevalent in this, because I feel like I could have been there, should have been there, should have gone at 10 o'clock. He'd be alive today. Could have, should have, would have, gone on and on and on. And the reality is I didn't, and the reality is he is dead. And the reality is I'm wearing part of that. And I addressed it with my sponsor, Dr. B. And this is what he says about forgiveness. Forgiveness is like setting a prisoner free and then finding out that prisoner was you. That's pretty good.
That's real good.
That's pretty good. It kind of simply put in trying to understand forgiveness, because it is very complex to explain. But just, for example, if you were to lend me, as Rich, I need $500. You lend me $500. And I'm going to pay you back. And my intention is absolutely to pay you back. I lose my job. I'm just struggling. I can't get along. I cannot pay you back this loan. I come to you. I'm sorry. I can't. And you forgive the loan. In other words, you don't owe me that money anymore, and I hold no contempt. That's the big one. That's the big one. Because, see, the action still took place. I still borrowed that money. That can't be changed. And I did not pay it back. I couldn't pay it back. And you forgave the loan, which means that it still happened, but I hold no contempt for you not repaying that loan. That's I think, a pretty good definition of forgiveness.
It's a real good definition, letting go of the contempt, because there's a lot of scenarios that play through life where, okay, look, I'll forgive you. And I know that we find ourselves in circumstances where we say we forgive you just so we don't have this thing between us anymore, the elephant in the room, you say that, but somewhere deep inside, we're still holding on to contempt for it.
Exactly, and I'm very guilty of that, saying things, well, I'm going to let it go. I'll let that go. No, I'm not letting it go. I'm just not talking about it out loud to you anymore. It's in between my ears, and where it's turning into a resentment, and I'm going to act out on it again.
And that's what happens. It turns into a resentment. So the next time that we have some sort of disagreement between ourselves, it might not be said, but you'll bring it up. You'll say, hey,
remember when I did that? Whoa, doesn't work. That's not forgiveness.
Right. Forgiveness is completely letting go of it.
Right, exactly.
And that is something that you need to do when it comes to this scenario deal with yourself.
And I believe it'll happen. But you know, I'm angry at Shane. I'm angry at Shane. You know, how could you do that? Look what you've done. You know, you're dead, and look at what you left behind. This poor girl, your mom, his mom's my age, even a little bit younger, lost a son, lost her husband 2 years ago to cancer, now loses a son to drug addiction. What do you say? How do you bring some peace to somebody who has had to endure that? And that's what this disease is. That's what it does. That's what it does to families. Ultimately, it destroys them.
You talk about selfishness and self-centeredness, and that is the first thought that comes to mind when you think, well, how could you do that? You know what your mother just went through. You know that you just lost her father. Now she's losing you. You put everybody through that. You put the girlfriend through it. Now you're putting me through it. You're putting everybody. You're putting your employer through it. You're putting your family through it.
You've got to the root of the problem. That is the root of the problem. It's that selfishness and self-centeredness. And the book is clear. I'm beating the big book right now. It's clear. If you don't rid yourself of that selfishness and self-centeredness, it kills you. That's what it says, and that's what it does. You don't have that rotten day. We've talked about this before. You don't have a bad credit report. You die. You die unless that selfishness and self-centeredness is rid. How do you do it? It goes on to explain you need God's help. You can't do it alone. This is too big. And if you allow him and work these 12 rational steps of behavior, your problems are going to be all right. You're going to be able to work through them. It's still life on life's terms. I still have feelings. I still feel guilty about this, but I have a process of being able to work through it. And I also believe that in our particular case, when you're doing 12-step work as you're living, as your occupation, nothing happens without reason. There is absolutely a reason that this happened in the future that I'm going to be able to take some advantage of. You know, as Reverend Jack said, and I'll always keep that in my head, he said that there's nothing so ugly that you have done that God can't change it into something magnificent. You know, and I don't think there's anything so ugly that happened, you know, that we can't find something magnificent in it. I don't know where it is yet, but I am optimistic that it will present itself.
Well, when you put yourself in the addict's shoes, let's go back just for a second. Shane did not think of those things when he was doing his drugs, and you weren't thinking of things when you were out running around. The addict is not cognizant of what he is doing to people. He might be on a certain level, but he didn't think he was going to die.
No.
He didn't. He grabbed that dope and thought, I'm going to get high now, and I'm going to feel good, and I'm going to put whatever problems I have aside. I'm going to go out and do my drugs. He wasn't thinking, well, geez, you know, I might die, and then my mom, and then he didn't think about any of that kind of stuff.
No, and it's that we talk about it in the rooms as the bondage of self, the bondage of self. Alcoholism is the only prison where the key is on the inside. The key is on the inside to this prison. This is an inside job. It's not an outside job. I can't take things and elements, people, places, and things on the outside and implement them to make me better. It will not work. I've got to start from the inside out. We start slowly, and it's with those feelings and dealing with those feelings, and they can hurt. They can hurt every bit as bad, if not worse, than a punch in the face. And people who suffer from this disease, whether you have it or whether you have somebody in your life who does have it, knows the pain that I am speaking of right now.
Let me just get personal for a second. I have 3 family members right now who are going something,
and it's not good.
It's not good, and you know, I can say that my brother, who has been out on the street for quite some time, called me last Tuesday and said he was ready.
You keep offering him the solution because I'm there when you offer him the solution.
He keeps saying, I'm ready. And I said, all right, I will buy you a plane ticket, but I will not give you any money. And I'm just open with him. And I said, dude, you know why I won't give you the money? Because you're going to go do dope with it. Right. You know that. We've had this conversation. You always wrap it up by saying, well, Rich, you know, I'm a dope fiend, so I'm sorry, but this... And he said, but I'm ready this time. I said, okay, I'll buy you a plane ticket. When you get out here, I'll put some money in your pocket. I'll give you some work to do. I'll give you a chance to earn some money. You'll have a bed with some crisp sheets in it. You'll have all the food you want. I have animals that you can pet and you can love. And all right, man, well, I said, call me tomorrow. And we'll get it started, because he was checking himself out of this this temporary place where he was staying. He said he'd been clean for 7 days. And I haven't heard from him in 5 days. I have another friend who is out and running around. I should say a nephew. I have a brother-in-law that is out running around right now who is in an opiate situation, which scares me when we talk about the Shane thing.
Yeah.
So I have all this hanging out there. Now, just to go back to what you were talking about, what can I do? If one of them goes, am I going to find myself in that situation that you were going through initially 2 weeks ago with woulda, coulda, shoulda? What can I do? I mean, what if one of them passes? What am I going to do?
Will you feel that way?
What is the advice that you would give me?
Put me in a corner like, you know
well,
what?
I just want you to bounce it and reflect it.
You pray. Man, you pray because I don't understand. It's too overwhelming. I need direction. I need care. God help me. You know, and that's what I've been doing. And the process would probably be instantaneous if my ego wouldn't get in the way, you know, but it continually does my way. Even at this stage of my recovery, sometimes I'm slow to accept God's good grace. And that's where it is, and that's where the understanding is. It's proven to us in the 12 steps of recovery that is always where the answer is. It's God, you know, and I absolutely, positively believe that if he could talk to us, he would tell you that you are my child. I love you unconditionally. It doesn't matter what you did. And as far as that goes, it doesn't matter what you're ever going to do. That will never change. I love you unconditionally. And what are my expectations of you? None. I want you to be happy and healthy. And I will lead you there if you allow me to do one thing, protect you. And that's a spiritual awakening, if you will. It's a start to understand and put a concept of that kind of God into your life, and magnificent things will happen.
All right. Tell yourself that, what you just said.
I'm going to. Thank you.
This is Trudge the Road. It is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Caron specializes in men's and women's services as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. If you're concerned about yourself or a loved one, call 1-800-854-6023, or you can go to their website, caron.org. That's CARON.org. Coming up, Glen is going to join the show. And you got quite a few things to talk to Glen about.
Glen and I share a love of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he's the pro from Dover when it comes to those first 164 pages. I'm excited.
It's coming up on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up, Jerry sits down with Glen, who is a big book scholar, and he shares his beginnings in his study of it. That's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Trudge the Road. My name is Jerry. I'm a sober alcoholic, and I'm proud to tell you that Trudge the Road is brought to you by the Caron Treatment Centers. Now, Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Now, they've got treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, in Florida, and in Texas, offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York, Philly, and D.C., and you can reach them by calling 800-854-6023. That's 800-854-6023. Or you can go to their website, which is caron.org. That's CARON.org. CARON.org. It's a great website. They're great people. They may have some answers to the questions that you have. And then, you know, that's what Trudge the Road is all about. This program is dedicated to folks who suffer from the disease of addiction to alcohol and to drugs. And every bit as important, family and friends. You suffer tremendously from this disease also. And we hope to be able to provide you some answers to the many questions we know you have, and ultimately, with God's good grace, provide some solutions to this tremendous dilemma. That's what we're all about, and we continue that effort with my friend Glen. Glen Goodman is here. Glen, thank you very much for coming by. I appreciate that.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Glen has been an addictions treatment counselor for many, many years. One of those jobs, nobody ever had the intention of getting that job, did we?
No, not really.
And ended up here and are here by God's good grace. And what you do, Glen, your reputation precedes you in the amount of love and education and selfless help that you give to all of your clients. He's up at the Caron Treatment Center, but I want to know first just a little bit about you. and about what Glen's like and what got you here and what started this spectacular many year career that you've had at Caron.
Well, basically I ran into trouble with drugs and alcohol as a result of, a genetic predisposition that I never understood in the beginning. But, I come from a background of, alcoholism. And in that background, there was so little that I knew in the beginning. I didn't even know there was an Alcoholics Anonymous.
Right, neither did I. Yeah, right.
I had no clue. The progression of my illness really took off after I got out of the Marine Corps in 1973. By the time I got to AA, I was 32 years old with a wife, 2 kids, and an addiction that was horrible. Intravenous heroin and cocaine addict, and done every other chemical. We called him a garbage head back in those days.
Right, right.
There was nothing pretty about it. I didn't even know, because of my defense system, that alcohol and drugs was the problem. I pointed the finger at everything else outside of me. I was taught that the drugs and the alcohol are a symptom of some really internal stuff.
Right. Using them as a temporary solution to our problems. I think that's something that the non-addicted person really finds it's probably difficult to comprehend, the fact that to you, alcohol or drugs is never a solution to a problem. If you're not addicted, it may ease a little of it, but it doesn't provide a solution. To us, it's almost an instantaneous solution to our problems. Take in the drugs, take in the alcohol, problems go away.
Yeah, but only temporary.
Oh, yeah. Very temporary. As they actually don't go away. They magnify while we're, in that incoherent type of mode. You spoke about a genetic predisposition, and we share that similarity. I come from a family of wonderful people, hardworking, educated, good folks, but there's a streak of addiction a mile wide. And up until my generation, the baby boomers, we've found our way into recovery, as to where the previous generation just died of alcoholism. And as a matter of fact, if you look at my own personal family, who were all gone by the time I was 26, and the cause of death, esophageal varices, which is the most common alcoholic death. This is what the death certificates read. The next one reads cirrhosis of the liver. The other one, blunt force trauma, and the other one reads suicide. And those are wrong, because the cause of death was alcoholism, and alcoholism. Because none of those events would have happened if it weren't predicated by the disease of addiction. And I say that to try and let folks know just absolutely how huge this is, and how it, at this point, had overcome your life. What happened? What made it change?
I wish I could answer that, when I crossed the line.
I'm the same way, because the day before I got sober, I had no intention of getting sober.
Right. Day I went into treatment, I did get rid of all of the paraphernalia I had, but I kept my mainstay, which was marijuana. I had a bag of that hidden.
Just
that I was going to be smoking pot in my grandfather's rocking chair on the porch, and God made that, so it must be okay.
That's right. I think I've used that excuse a time or two. If it's from God, it's all right. All right. Now, this genetic predisposition in your family. So you were no stranger to the disease, but were you the first one who was able to face it and find a solution?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what happened and how you did that.
Well, how it happened was, the consequences of addiction,
Absolutely.
The unmanageability, that got me into recovery. A friend of mine who dropped out of my life about 6 months prior to me coming into recovery, I invited him to my home one day during that 6 months, and I forgot I had invited him, and he came, and I was partying with some friends that were over, and he refused to come in my house, and he told me at the front door that he was now in recovery, and I didn't have a clue what that was, but my life was spiraling out of control, and he happened to be the guy that I called on the night that things just came to a head, where no matter what I did, I couldn't get loaded.
Mm-hmm. I know that feeling.
No matter what.
Yeah.
I was looking at some legal problems. I've been kidnapped for, some debt that I owed to dealers, and
not a pretty situation.
No. Family threatened, house going to be burned down. The kind of things that you run into when you're out there doing.
Absolutely tragic and consequences of just disproportionate value.
Yeah.
All right, so you find your way into the rooms of recovery, and I'm sure the furthest thing from your mind was that God had a little plan for you that you would enter not only into recovery but into the field of recovery. And a lot of that is based on traditional recovery. And you and I both have traditional, what they would call big book recovery within in Alcoholics Anonymous. And you are an authority, and I am a student. And I think that it's incredibly important for folks who are listening to know a little bit about that book, because we talk about it. What is that big book of Alcoholics Anonymous? I happen to be carrying one. I carry it with me all the time. This one's seen better days, but it's got a lot of good grace to it, What is this book?
That book is actually the Bible for a recovering person, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I believe what it contains in there is the recipe for recovery as the first 100 experienced it. Not talked about it, not theorized about it, but how they experienced it. And, rather than it becoming a whisper down the alley thing, they got together and wanted to publish a book that had the clear-cut, precise directions on how to recover, how they did it. It's written in a way that it provides for us directions, it provides for us promises, it provides for us warnings, and it also provides prayer. And in those first 164 pages, after Bill's story, the first 100 really kind of come in and say, okay, here's what we did. Our way didn't work. Here's what we did. It worked for us. Why don't you try it?
And it is an amazing book. And again, to call it the big book, but it's just the first 164 pages, if you will, would be the map or the instructions.
Correct.
And the rest are stories of recovery.
Yeah, the stories are basically for a validation of what their lives were like, what happened, and what they're like now.
It must seem to people who are listening that a disease of this magnitude, a disease of this complexity, a disease of this nature that has absolutely no cure and it is fatal, that we have found a solution that's in 164 pages?
Yeah, sounds absurd. But before 1935, there was nothing.
Absolutely. Outside of a brief period where the Washingtonians provided some type of recovery, in 5,000 years, really, there has been nothing. We just died and ended up in insane asylums and prisons.
Correct.
This has been the first opportunity, and it's just from the 30s by, frankly, a kind of arrogant stockbroker and a proctologist who shook a lot.
Yeah, you didn't want him working on you.
Dr. Bob and Bill, we're going to find out more about them and about this incredible book and more about this incredible man named Glen right here on Trudge the Road as we continue. Glen, can you hang with us for a while, my friend?
Absolutely.
He's the best. All right. Trudge the Road, my friends, is sponsored by Caron Treatment Centers, and Caron is a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. Now, what Caron does is specialize in men's and women's services, as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. They have got it covered. So listen, if you are concerned about yourself or a loved one, jot this phone number down. It's 800-854-6023. That's 800-854-6023. Or go to their website, which is easy. It's Caron.org. That's spelled Caron.org. Caron.org. You're going to meet some nice people on that website and get some wonderful advice, and we pray for you. We'll be back with more of Trudge the Road in just a moment. This is the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You're listening to Trudge the Road. Coming up next, Jerry continues his discussion with Glen, and they dive into the big book. It's next on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
There is a new face of recovery, and you see it in the pages of Renew Magazine and at RenewEveryday.com. Renew and RenewEveryday.com are changing the face of recovery for good. Each issue is filled with positive role models, life-affirming stories, encouragement, and ideas to help any life in recovery. Whether you're already enjoying an addiction-free life, have a loved one facing his challenges, or are considering recovery, Renew and RenewEveryday.com can support and inspire you. Join us. Check out RenewEveryday.com to learn more.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to more of Trudge the Road on the Trudge the Road Radio Network. I'm an alcoholic named Jerry, and Trudge the Road is brought to you by the Caron Treatment Centers. Now, Caron, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment, has treatment facilities in Pennsylvania, Florida, also in Texas, offices in Bermuda, Boston, New York City, Philly, and Washington, D.C. Now, you can reach them, and they're wonderful people who can really help out at 800-854-6023. That's 800-854-6023, or by going to their website, which is caron.org. That's CARON.org. Now, the reason Trudge the Road is on the air, we're not selling anything, we don't want anything, we're not trying to offer you anything except a little peace of mind. This show is dedicated to folks who suffer from the disease of addiction to alcohol and to drugs, and every bit as important, family and friends. You're unfortunately involved in this too, significantly involved, probably more so than you realize. And there is help. There are answers to your questions, and we will do our best to provide some of them here for you, and with God's good grace, hopefully be able to provide you some solutions to our dilemma. My friend Glen, who is a drug and alcohol addictions counselor at Caron, is with us, and he's old school like I am, was brought up within the big book in the first 164 pages, and we absolutely positively believe that that is where the answer to our dilemma is contained. As a matter of fact, specifically, it addresses our dilemma as being lack of power, and that's what this book is exactly about, giving some power. So, Glen, if I could just read to you out of the book. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. And I bring that up to continue maybe a little bit of our chat here about powerlessness and the power that is contained in this book.
Yeah, that reference that you went to really, for me and for what I try to help folks understand is that, we have unmanageability or powerlessness in two different ways. I believe we're powerless physically over the drugs and alcohol because once we put them in and the brain chemistry takes its action, we get the phenomenon of craving, which wants more of the same. And the powerlessness mentally, and most alcoholics and addicts really get lost on that piece because they really never looked at their thinking prior to the first drink. And that reference that you made to is really about talking about the thoughts before a person takes the first drink or drug. Mm-hmm. And we have cultivated from so far back a defense system, that we have learned how to rationalize, minimize, intellectualize, justify just about any situation that would make it okay for us to use.
To a point where even somebody who knows it's wrong will believe it. We can rationalize that well.
Absolutely. I mean, probably started out for us the first time we got caught, and Mom said, "Is that alcohol I smell on you?"
No.
We lied. We told a blow-faced lie to the woman that brought us into the world. And hence that begins that defense system that, and it may have started long before that too, believe me.
Absolutely.
If you come from the wounded parents that most of us come from in this society.
And it does seem to be almost synonymous in our cases that there is elements that greatly affected us in childhood that we bring ourselves into adulthood with.
Yeah, I kind of see this society as a gentleman that I read often, Robert Burney, talks about the wounded soul and how the society has been, controlled behavior with guilt and shame as a whole. That's the society we come from, where behaviors, when, for example, when you were little, what controlled your behavior that was uncomfortable for the adults, as they laid out some guilt and shame. And therefore, there's an internalized belief system that develops, and we're walking around. Every addict that I've asked, an alcoholic that I've asked, have you ever had the feeling that you didn't fit in, that you didn't belong, that you were not enough? Something must be wrong with me. And most of them all answer, And I fundamentally believe that that's a real setup for us to look outside ourselves for something to make us okay. I also believe what Bradshaw says there is that separation from self happened long before we ever had the ability to reason anything. And the first time I took that drink and got that place, went to that place.
All right.
That calmed the restless irritability and the discontent. Absolutely. The funny thing about that is I got sick as a dog after that, and I blamed it on Southern Comfort. And so I didn't drink that for the next 15 years.
Right.
But everything else.
Yeah, exactly. I think we've all had that one that we would, that kind of wrenched us up a little bit. All right, and getting back to the book, and now, maybe having a little bit of a better understanding about how we feel and how the alcohol works with us. Before I go back into the instructions, you mentioned something that I wish that you would explain to everyone, and that is the phenomenon of craving. Now, this just happens to us, people who have the disease. Non-addicted people never have it.
Yeah, correct. And our medical team could probably describe it a lot better than I could. I'm not an authority on our brain chemistry, but it talks about an abnormal limbic system, which and chemicals that we don't have in our brains that process the alcohol.
Would it be fair to say that, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm talking about our own personal experience, that when you're in that level of the phenomenon of craving, the message your brain is sending is that if I don't get this drug or alcohol, I am going to die. You're going to die. You've got to have it.
I believe that's in the withdrawal process. When my alcohol or blood level content isn't high enough for me to be shooting off enough dopamine
right.
to be feeling okay, But a phenomenon of craving, as I understand it, is, for example, being so drunk you can't walk or so loaded that you can't talk and function properly, and you've had way more than enough of anything, and that still wanting more. That phenomenon of craving.
That's a much better explanation. That's a much better definition.
Yeah, I think that the description of after 1 we crave 1 times as hard, or after 10 it's 10 times as hard, the cravings. So the more we put in, the harder we crave. That's why the feeling of never getting enough, always wanting more.
So the fact of the matter exists that I will drink myself to death.
Yeah.
And I came close so many times, and I believe I'm quoting you here, who said I had a brain that would not work and a body that would not die. and it was kind of a rough place to be in, obviously. All right, now with a little bit more understanding, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it goes as far as to say, upon awakening. All right. The instructions in here, as cleverly hidden as they may be, do encompass what we do from the minute we wake up to the minute we go to bed. Could you explain a little bit about what that is?
I think each step builds on the other, and the directions for daily living really doesn't get exposed to us until we're after step 9, after we've made the amends and the promises, and getting into the step 10, which is basically the daily practice of what we can do on an event-by-event basis upon awakening. We think about the 24 hours ahead. And then pray for the guidance that our behavior be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, manipulation, all that kind of stuff that we've done.
Asking for a spiritual intervention into your daily behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right, and this process, and you mentioned, doing the steps, counterintuitive. I simply don't want to. They scare me, or they're not applicable to me. And the reality, and I will get you to explain this further, and please correct me if I'm wrong, in your opinion, would you look at the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous as 12 principles of rational behavior?
Yeah, really accessing the frontal lobe of our brain to give us the thought, and that's where there are times, like it says when you read that there are certain times when we don't have a defense against that, and therefore we need a power greater than ourselves, and I know that relationship is something that we have to invest in. On a personal level. I think that spiritual development is an individual journey, that everybody's journey is their journey. No matter what others look like, theirs is theirs.
Everybody individual, everybody to their own. All right, the first step being basically surrender. I admitted I was powerless over alcohol and my life had become unmanageable. Surrender. Not too long ago, I was giving a talk at the VA hospital to some alcoholics up there, and I brought up that word surrender, and I realized soldiers don't like to hear that word. They wanted to argue, and I understand. I mean, just sociologically, we're brought up, don't give up, don't give up. But this is, and if you will, it's a cliche, the surrender to win thing. Could you explain a little bit about what that is?
Paradoxical thing, yeah. What surrender for me, 4 years in the Marine Corps code of conduct, you don't surrender to nothing.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, the difficulty that I had with that part of the process.
Especially a Marine.
Yeah, I mean, it just took time. It just took time to make sense of it all. I think a lot of us don't understand the process. That we look at the steps, and often they're abstract because they're on the board somewhere in a meeting room, when in actuality they've been taken out of the book. Mm-hmm. And the book is where the clear-cut, precise directions are. And without having, most folks early on in recovery can't put two sentences together, let alone, read and comprehend something. It took me 5 years.
Back to that surrender, I learned surrender from a retired Marine, a Vietnam-era Marine, who said, you do it, and that's who you are.
Yeah.
And see if this makes sense. I guess it's in the Geneva Convention that when a soldier does surrender, he is to do this. He takes his weapon, and he lays it down, and he sits there and waits for somebody to come tell him what to do, which is an unconditional act. And, if he were to go for that weapon, boom, there's going to be and the similarity that he showed me within the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous is we do the same. We come in and we take the drink and we set it down and we sit there, and listen to the suggestions that are made to us and act upon it. A definition of surrender, I don't know. I'll just throw that out to you.
Yeah, I believe the conclusions that we come to in the first two steps, that we're powerless, and that we need power, brings us to a decision of, all right, what action do I need to take to find that power?
And that's what we need to talk about, and we will in the future. Glenn, I wish we had more time, but we'll leave it there. Don't want to leave people hanging. You can find out right now a little bit more if you pick up a copy of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Get one at any meeting room or any a bookstore. Basically, we'll have it, and you'll find out that information. But we have to have you back. You're fascinating, and you provide some information that is absolutely crucial to all of us to be able to live successfully this day, one day at a time. And I appreciate it a lot, Glenn.
You're so welcome.
All right, we'll learn more about Glenn, too, on our website, which is recoveryforlifechannel.com. Trudge the Road is brought to you by Caron Treatment Centers. Caron, a nonprofit leading provider of drug and alcohol addiction treatment. They specialize in men's and women's services as well as young adult males and females, plus a relapse program and outpatient services. So if you are concerned about yourself or a loved one, give them a call at 800-854-6023. Go to their website, which is caron.org. That's CARON.org. And I can tell you firsthand that the place is filled with folks just as wonderful as Glenn, who you just heard, who will be back for more. This is Trudge the Road on the Trudge the Road Radio Network.
You've been listening to Trudge the Road on this great radio station, which is part of the Trudge the Road radio network. If you'd like to connect with Rich or Jerry, visit our website, recoveryforlifechannel.com, and send them an email. And join us next week for Trudge the Road.